I'll introduce our next speaker, Robert Ritz, data scientist and director at Lay2 Mongolia. Robert's going to be discussing teaching business data science in a developing country. Robert, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And I'll go ahead and share some slides as well. So hopefully you can see that. I'm a bit unusual, I guess, on the in this talk, and also maybe unusual a bit in the educators that are using DeepNote, in that I'm not in the U.S. or even a Western country. I'm in Mongolia, so I run a business school here in Mongolia where we teach business and data science together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we do that and kind of the philosophy of what we're trying to do with our undergraduate program. And also, how DeepNote kind of complements that and assists us with in that way. So I'm going to kind of have three little sections here. I'll give a very brief intro to what we do. And then as I talk about some of the challenges our students face, I also want to mention how DeepNote actually helps us solve in some way some of these challenges. So first I can talk about the program. We're oftentimes, and it's becoming more common, but oftentimes you hear about data science education, and it's oftentimes put into the either math department or computer science department, or it's maybe only available at the graduate level. And when we wanted to start the data science program at the school, we really understood that the students who are going to get the most out of data science are going to be the ones who are going into the workforce right after their undergraduate degree. They're going to be the ones who are introducing the tools, introducing the concepts directly into the business as quickly as possible. And so we wanted to kind of marry these two things together. We were already a business school, and adding data science just made sense. And currently, about a third of our students choose to do this kind of hybrid business administration and data science undergraduate program. At the same time, we do everything in English at the school here in Mongolia, which is very helpful for our students because they're able to then converse and deal with data science in the primary language it's used around the world, which means they're not limited by the tools, techniques, or people they can work with. We're very practical with the data science as well. We very much more focus on modeling and problem solving as opposed to theory. And I can talk more about that in a bit, but we try to emphasize that practical skills, and then as they get those skills with the real world data sets and also with the Python libraries, then we add in more theory so that they kind of get that back knowledge, which may be opposite to other places. We also try to be as rigorous as possible. So our students aren't just learning analysis; they're learning everything from exploratory data analysis all the way through machine learning modeling, both traditional and deep learning, and also moving towards deploying their models, code, and analysis to the web through various methods. Maybe it's a DeepNote notebook that's turned into an app, or maybe it's actually building a full stack app where they can deploy their analysis or their models. So let me talk now about some of the challenges that we face. Being in a developing country, lots of times we don't, things are just different, I'll just say. And so we have to adapt to that so that, the education that we're giving to the students maps out to what the companies expect, and also to help those students succeed when they get into the workforce. The number one challenge that I noticed when we started doing this was really a lack of dedicated data science IT infrastructure at pretty much every company. Even the largest companies in Mongolia don't have dedicated tooling or even really confirmed preferences for tooling for any kind of data science team or task. In that way, we basically have to teach students from scratch how to install their environments on various types of hardware, whether it be on a server, a local computer, maybe even an IoT device if that's required, and put all these things together themselves, and really go into a situation where the company is just really not able to support these data scientists to do their job, and so they have to learn to be very self-sufficient. DeepNote kind of helps in this because it puts a lot of these, tools into one box. So, of course, Python, you can also add SQL, and then of course the storytelling element. These three things together, when students get some experience using DeepNote, they start to understand how they themselves could even use a tool like DeepNote or others to kind of work together and piece together this tooling. As an example, a former student is working at one of the largest banks here in the country, and they walked into a situation where the company is moving from an Oracle database system to now with Spark and Cassandra, and then they're using Zeppelin, like Apache Zeppelin notebooks in the cloud. And her experience with DeepNote and other cloud notebooks that we were able to give them in school really prepared her for that kind of interesting environment, and that was a very positive thing. I also the next challenge is probably the hardest one, and it's not really a technical challenge, but it's how can we demonstrate that the students who are learning business administration and data science together have the competence to actually solve business problems using data science. Effectively, we need to convince business leaders that their IT people aren't actually data scientists, that the IT people, their job is to run the systems of the company and do a good job with that. DeepNote in this way actually really helps because it allows for our students to demonstrate that they have that technical fluency because they can put the code together, but then they can also communicate the results of their analysis or their model in a way that the business leaders can also understand. So this can involve article and report writing and basically, just, summary analysis of what they've done. But also if they want to, and this is always a really big, wow factor for business leaders when our students are at interns or even their first job, is if they can put together, an analysis in one notebook and then deploy that as an app to just really quickly show what their model is capable of, with the real company data in real time. That's an excellent thing. The reason why I put this, probably this very famous, everyone knows this Venn diagram over here on the side, is that more often than not in Mongolia, they have the skills that they're coming in from is from IT, and we really want to go in from the business side of things, and then add in those technical and math and statistics skills into it. So we're really approaching the problem from a different angle, I think, than most. The another issue that is it's kind of an interesting one, and I still don't understand it, is how a lot of data science professionals, if you will, in Mongolia, at least in my experience, they really insist on building everything from scratch. As people and professionals in data science know, with the wealth of libraries and tooling out there, there's really not much of a reason to build something yourself. And if you have a limited team and a limited budget, you really shouldn't be trying to build these things yourself. DeepNote shows our students that what really matters is ROI and TCO, so return on investment and total cost of ownership. If you can calculate your ROI and TCO of a tool and it turns out to be lower than building from scratch, then you should be doing that. DeepNote is a great example of that because students can say, hey, this is a great tool. It's already available. We can roll this out, ourselves, on an individual level, or the company can adopt it. And that's just one example of what they could be using. The last example here of challenges that we faced is, remote learning. This is actually a picture during one of the lockdowns in Ulaanbaatar, where we're located. And, the city was basically deserted. Students were really feeling isolated during this time when we were teaching remotely. We were doing a combination of asynchronous and synchronous learning. And so when we would go on these synchronous sessions, the students would maybe be having challenges, which is of course normal. And it was amazing to be able to jump into DeepNote with them live on a call, and then just really, get into the code with them and talk about what was going on, how they could solve the problem, and where we could all learn from each other in that way. And to me, that was really a magical, use of DeepNote that really I haven't been able to replicate with any other tool. So hopefully that used up as much of the time as I could. So hopefully, if you have any questions, I'm very, very happy to answer them. And, this is a GAIR in Mongolia. I don't live in something like this. I live in a city, which is, pretty normal, but this is an example of the countryside here.
How do you deal with the trade-offs between teaching students who may have to build a lot of things from scratch versus cloud products that are already kind of up and running and you just click and you're writing Python? How do you deal with that from a teaching standpoint? Because it's sort of like that classic thing of like, well, you can use this product, but it hides everything for you. Or we can spend 2 days learning how to set up virtual environments and installation and all of this stuff. How do you deal with that? And what are your insights there?
Yeah, so for when they start their introduction to Python class, we actually I'm doing it right now. We're on our the end of our first week. We normally actually spend 2 weeks, so 4 class sessions, just dealing with setting up Anaconda, learning how to use the command line, and getting going with that. That's really key, no matter what. No matter if they're going to go into an established enterprise where they have all these cloud one-click notebooks. It's still key that they know how to do it, in my mind, because we don't really know where they're going to end up in the end. But at the same time, now, for example, with my intermediate Python class, where we're really getting more into like object-oriented programming, DeepNote is really great because it allows them to like really quickly leverage, starting a new environment or setting up something. They don't, it's just faster. And then also allowing that kind of asynchronous help or even synchronous help through the notebook. So basically the short answer is we do both. This is a kind of a problem plaguing data science right now, which is just tool overload. But I try to give them a sense of that tool overload while they're in school, so that they can start to develop preferences and kind of mental models on how to, select the right tool for themselves when they move forward.
You mentioned there is some cultural norm to set up things from scratch in Mongolia. This is a bit tangential, but do you have any theories with why that is the case? Do you feel any change after you show students to use packages and libraries in data science?
Yeah, so my theory is, and this is something we debate a lot, is that the majority of practitioners in the data science space in Mongolia today come from a software engineering background. So they get taught, really lower level, much lower level languages than Python generally. And the tradition of teaching computer science in Mongolia really comes from honestly, I mean, speaking very frankly, the Russian kind of mathematical tradition. And that is that, algorithms and, logic puzzles are more highly valuable, which means that if you can do them, you're considered to be more proficient. Whereas, import library and then do it is basically cheating, they think. When there's a kind of a big difficulty now going on with transfer learning in Mongolia, because a lot of the local Kaggle competitions that they're doing through local organizations, my students are using transfer learning and they're beating the pants off of, of course, from scratch models. And so it's a little bit of an interesting situation.